right, great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name is Brian LaFale. I work for the Rhode Island DEM in the Office of Water Resources. Me and my team will be presenting to you a compliance training presentation that we put together for property owners that need to comply with the Mashapaug stormwater permit. The meeting is being recorded so that we can post it online and people can return to the website and view it if they want to look at it again. The format of the workshop will be approximately 1 hour. We're going to present straight through that 1 hour, and then we're going to we have set aside some time at the end for questions. So please save your questions till the end. If you feel like you might lose track of your question, you can enter it into the question and answer box in the Teams platform, and we will go over all the questions that are asked. And if we can answer them, if Maya can answer them along the way, she will. If she can't, we'll answer them at the end. But either way, we'll go over all the questions that are asked. We will also be able to return to any slides that you want to return to if you have a question about a particular slide and you want to go back to it. Your microphones will be off, but when we ask you to ask questions, we give you the opportunity. You can raise your hand. You can turn your mic on and ask any questions that you wish, and we'll do our best to answer them. So the purpose of the training event, as I said, is to provide property owners with information they need to know to apply for permit coverage. We're also going to highlight the most important permit requirements that you should be aware of, including any compliance deadlines. Please note that we're not going to cover each and every element of the permit, so you do have to comply with the permit in its entirety. So you will have to be aware what the permit says. You'll have to look at it in more detail, but we tried to cover the most important requirements in this presentation. So before we get started, I just want to introduce my team. And when your name is called, just show your face so everybody can see who you are. So again, my name is Brian LaFale. I'm the supervisor of the Municipal and Industrial Stormwater Program. With me today, helping me present, is Jennifer Stout. Say hi, Jennifer. Jennifer is an environmental engineer. She's been with DEM for over 20 years, focusing most of her work here on stormwater issues. The second speaker that you'll hear from today after me is Leon Lai. Leon joined our team a little over a year ago. He's a recent graduate. He's an environmental engineer as well. And Leon's primary focus is this permit and this project. You'll also be seeing Maya. She's not going to present, but she'll be helping us manage the chat if anybody has any issues seeing the slides. And by the way, if you have an issue, please let us know right now. You can type that in the chat. If you have a question, Maya will try to answer it. If she can't answer it, like I said, we'll go over it at the end. So when we post the slides and the presentation, you'll have our contact information if you need to reach out to us directly. All right, so here's our agenda. I'm going to get into the agenda in more detail in a minute, but I just wanted to, really focus our minds on what this presentation is all about. We're really focusing on sort of three main things, and that's identifying who's subject to the permit, highlighting the actions that people need to take to comply, and identifying those key compliance dates that you need to be aware of, both one-time compliance dates and reoccurring compliance dates. Because we have a lot of information to cover, we're not going to cover the background on the permit, how it was developed. We're not going to talk a lot about the watershed and the stormwater pollution issues in the watershed. All that information was discussed at the public workshop in July of 2025. That recording is posted on our website. We'll share the website link throughout the presentation. We also have a detailed discussion of the permit basis and the background on the permit in our fact sheet, which is also on our website. So what we are going to focus on today is very quickly, we'll go through the permit issuance process, sort of, how we got from a draft permit to the final permit and how we got to where we are today. We'll talk about our overall permitting strategy, and key terminology that you need to know to comply with the permit and understand the permit. Leon is going to talk about the permit requirements that apply to each property owner that's subject to the permit, and we're going to highlight and summarize for you all the deadlines that you need to be aware of. Jennifer is then going to finish off with a discussion on how to apply for permit coverage, what forms you need to complete, things you need to know to complete them. She will also go over any reporting requirements, record keeping requirements that you need to be aware of, and we'll finish off with compliance assistance resources that are available to you. And as I said earlier, we'll finish the presentation with the question and answer session. So looking at the permit issuance timeline, we began in July of 2025 with an informal process which involved 2 public workshops. Both workshops covered the same information. They were in 2 different formats. One was recorded, was virtual, like this presentation today. Another one was in person in Cranston. Those workshops, the purpose of those workshops was to introduce the draft permit framework, answer questions, and gather feedback prior to the formal public comment period. Following the public workshops, we did initiate a public comment period and public notice period. That started on October 10th and went till December 22nd of 2025. This was an opportunity for the public and property owners, anybody really, to submit comments in writing to us. We also received a request to extend the comment period past the normal 30 days. So it did get extended to December. During that same time period, we received many requests for a public hearing. We held a public hearing on November 20th, 2025, and people had an opportunity to formally submit oral comments. Those comments were transcribed. They are available upon request from DEM. If you do a public records request, we can provide you a copy of that. Following the public notice and comment period, we compiled all of the comments that we received, both in writing and verbally, from the transcript. We assessed those comments, and we issued a response to each of those comments in writing. That response to comments was posted on our website, and we rendered a final permit decision on February 13th of 2026. When we decided to issue the permit and issue the response to comments, we established a permit effective date of April 1st, 2026. The general permit is a 5-year permit, and it will expire in 2031. So one of the big concepts that we need to make sure every property owner understands is the concept of impervious cover. Impervious cover is any surface that prevents or significantly impedes infiltration of water into the underlying soil. It's things that we're all familiar with, such as roads, driveways, parking areas, buildings, rooftops, structures. These are all features that are in our built environment. They're not things we see in the natural environment, but they're things that we see in an urbanized area. In the pictures before you, you can see examples of impervious cover that have been taken within the watershed, the Mashapaug watershed. We've got large areas of parking lots, rooftops, sidewalks. And impervious cover is important because impervious cover collects pollutants, and these pollutants are washed off of these surfaces during storm events. And in most cases, they provide little to no treatment or infiltration before those pollutants are discharged to our surface waters. And the other reason why impervious cover is important is because our general permit requirements are divided into tiers based on the amount of impervious cover present. Getting into the properties that are subject to the general permit, as we said during the permit process, this permit applies to properties with 1 acre or more of impervious cover within the Mashapaug watershed. The map that you see before you is an interactive map. This is just a still shot of the interactive map, but this map is on our website. The green line represents the watershed where this permit applies. The purple properties and the yellow properties are the properties that are subject to the permit within the cities of Cranston and Providence. So the watershed covers both cities. There are a total of 59 properties that are subject to the permit. 29 are in Cranston, 30 are in Providence. Of those properties in each city, there are 2 tiers of properties. In Cranston, there are 3 properties that are 7+ acres of impervious cover and 26 that are in the 1 to 7 acre category. In Providence, we have 30 total properties, 4 of which are 7 acres or more of impervious cover and 26 are 1 to 7. I would like to also emphasize that this permit applies to the legal property owner. They are the entity that's responsible for complying, not a tenant or a site operator. This is different from our industrial general permit, where the site operator is the party that's responsible for complying. Next, I want to talk about how we address stormwater pollution on any given site. We use an adaptive management approach, whether it's an industrial site or a site with impervious cover within the Mashapaug watershed. There are 3 key elements to this approach, and all 3 elements are very critical. The order of implementation is also important, as each step in the process makes the subsequent step more effective. And you're going to see these steps and these themes throughout the permit, and you're also going to see them throughout the presentation today. So the first step that we want to take on any given site is to try to prevent or minimize the exposure of pollutants to stormwater. So in the picture at the top, you can see, this is just one example. This is a salt storage pile. It's covered. When it rains, the stormwater is not going to interact with that salt storage pile. It's not going to be able to carry away the pollutants into the storm drain or directly into the receiving water body. So that's really the first stage, is to try to prevent pollution or minimize exposure. The next step would be to perform good housekeeping on a property. Maybe on a property, you can't cover everything. You can't keep everything from being exposed. Then we want to take steps to keep a clean site, to maintain existing infrastructure, maintain equipment. If you have vehicles that may be leaking, you want to make sure those are maintained so those pollutants don't come in contact with stormwater. And we also want to maintain our stormwater treatment systems if they exist. The last step, after we've been able to accomplish the first 2, is to install or implement new stormwater control measures. Now, some of you may be engineers on this call. Some of you may know engineers, and you know that engineers love acronyms. But don't be intimidated by this acronym, stormwater control measure. It's just a generic term for a structural or non-structural practice that helps us eliminate pollutants in stormwater. The picture on the bottom left is an example of a structural stormwater control measure known as a bioretention area or rain garden. This structure uses vegetation and soil media to treat stormwater and promote infiltration. This is also an example of what you may have heard of as called green infrastructure. Green infrastructure is a generic term, but generally is describing a stormwater treatment system that has vegetation and soil media mimicking a natural system. Stormwater control measures, or SCMs, don't always involve constructing a treatment system. They also may be non-structural. They may include enhanced good housekeeping measures, such as performing sweeping at more frequent intervals. Leon is going to go over more examples of these types of stormwater control measures as we go through the permit presentation. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Leon. He's going to go into the specific requirements that apply to properties with 1 to 7 acres of impervious cover.
Thank you, Brian. Like Brian mentioned, we're going over some requirements for properties between 1 and 7 acres of impervious cover. This is going to be a majority of the group here. Go to the next slide. So we start off with minimizing pollutant exposure. This can be part 3A of the permit. So the permit requirement is just preventing stormwater from contacting any pollutants, minimizing exposure of materials to runoff and rain, properly managing materials, waste, and chemicals. And how do you meet these requirements? Simply by just keeping materials covered or contained if they're outside, store waste and chemicals in protected areas, keeping dumpsters covered when they're not in use, and then cleaning up any spills and leaks promptly. Next, we're going to be going to implementing a good housekeeping program. This is going to be part 3B of the permit, and then inspection and maintenance. So we're going to be going over catch basins and sweeping. So for catch basins, they need to be inspected twice a year. So once between November 15th and December 15th after leaf fall, and then one more time during the month of April, usually after snow melts. And then for the cleaning of the actual catch basin, it's needed on based on inspection results. So if the catch basin is above 50% subcapacity, they need to be cleaned. But if you inspect it and it's not over 50%, then you don't need to clean it. But you still need to inspect it twice a year. Similar for sweeping, it needs to be swept twice a year, once between November 15th and December 15th after early fall, and then again once during the month of April when the snow melts. Next, we're going to be going into similar to the housekeeping program. These are some areas to look at on your site to keep them properly maintained and cleaned and make sure they're functioning. It could be pipes and conveyance systems such as culverts, swales, ditches. We have outfalls and drainage channels, any outlets, head walls, piped outfalls that go to any water bodies, any stormwater control measures that you might have on your site already, such as infiltration basins, bad retention areas, rain gardens, oil separators, and then any areas on your site, such as dumpsters and waste storage areas, any loading and unloading zones, outdoor material storages, or any places where you might be parking your vehicles or equipment. Those might be some places to look at to make sure that they're properly maintained and clean. Next, we're going to go into minimizing impacts from major stormwater events. It's going to be part 3C. So this is just storing any materials on your site that might be um, above, you want to store it so it's above flooding level. So if your site has any areas that are subject to flooding, any you need to temporarily reduce the outdoor storage before any storms that are coming. Spill prevention control and response plans as part 3D, just properly training your staff and maintaining tools to be able to quickly respond to any spills that might happen on your site. And then just following any local reporting requirements if there is a spill that affects public health. And we have implement erosion and sediment control practices, part 3E. This is just stabilizing any erodible soils that you have on your site, using controls such as silt fences, wattles, or berms to just contain that sediment uh, before it goes into the runoff. Next slide that we're going to be looking at, it's going to be a site. It's going to be kind of an example for you guys. So if you guys can see on the top left corner, look at number 1. So that's going to be anything on your site, just such as material stockpiles. That could be sand, salt, anything like that that's kind of left out in the open. On the top left also, number 2, it's going to be any dumpsters and waste storage pollutants. These pollutants can come from those areas, so you just kind of take a look at that. And on the same site, take a look on the right side. Number 7, this is going to be any fleet storage or maintenance areas. Pollutant sources from that can come from just soap, oils, greases, any metals from the car. So it's yeah. So if every site's a little different, so when you take a look at your own site, you kind of just try to find some areas that pollutants might be at, and those are just a few examples that we had. Next slide. There's another requirement that we have. It's going to be the green infrastructure and impervious cover reduction evaluation. So this requirement is only an evaluation, it's not an installation. So for property owners, annually they have to evaluate their site for opportunities to reduce or eliminate impervious cover, improve stormwater infiltration, establish aquatic buffers, and then also when any sites that are planning capital projects, the owners must evaluate opportunities to incorporate green infrastructure. But even if there's no projects that are being planned, property owners will still need to evaluate their site annually for potential improvements. And then these improvements that are being evaluated, they must be in the annual report, and they must describe and list out all identified opportunities on your site. And each year you have to reevaluate your site for any new opportunities that might come up. And there's also going to be grants that might be available for properties that are between 1 and 7, because this isn't a permit requirement for them to be installed. You guys should be eligible to apply to those and get some funding and try to get ahead of the future requirements that are coming up. Next slide. So this is the same site that we just looked at before, but these are some possible improvements that can be made to that site. So I'm going to be taking a look at a few examples. So on this site, if you can kind of see on the bottom middle section right here, there's a lot of unused pavement, and that pavement could be used to possibly install a treatment system. So here we have a small treatment basin that is treating any of the stormwater runoff on that area. And towards the right side, we also have an existing SCM that's already on site. You guys might already have some of this, but they need to be properly maintained and possibly upgraded to meet the criteria to be given credit for that. And then again, there's just any pavement that's not being used that can be converted or yeah, converted so that they're not um, not kind of just there, not being used. Usually a lot of pavement isn't always going to be used, so yeah. Next slide. We're going to be looking at some key dates for anyone that's between 1 and 7 acres impervious cover. So the first date is going to be October 1st, 2026. This is when the NOI is going to be due, so the notice of intent. So that's the first day that they must be due by. And then we have November 15th to December 15th, 2026. This is going to be when sweeping and catch basin cleaning is going to start to be performed. And then it's going to be done yearly after that. And then in February 15th, 2027, the annual report is going to be due, and the green infrastructure evaluation is going to also be included in that annual report. That's going to be due yearly after that also. And then moving on into April, so April 2027, same thing, the sweeping and catch basin cleaning and infrastructure maintenance. That's going to begin, and that's going to be done yearly after that. And lastly, we have July 15th, 2027. So this is going to be when the annual fee is going to be due. So it's going to be $100, and it's going to be due yearly after that. All right, next slide, we're going to be looking at requirements for properties that are 7+ acres of impervious cover. There's not too many, okay, I believe there's only a handful of these, but yeah. So there's going to be two parts I'm going to be focusing on. It's going to be the stormwater management plan, so the SWIMP, and the stormwater control plan, the SCP. So first, we're going to be going over the SWIMP requirements. So what is a SWIMP? So a SWIMP is a stormwater management plan that's site-specific documentation that identifies pollutant resources and outlines any stormwater that will be managed on the property to protect water quality. And it must be submitted with the NOI, and it's subject to DEM review and approval. So what needs to be included in this management plan? So a pollution prevention team. So who's going to be on your team that's going to be responsible? Site description and map. So this is kind of just a map of your site, just showing any land use, drainage patterns, the impervious cover on your site, and any stormwater features that you might already have. Pollutant sources, such as dumpsters, fueling zones, anything that is an area of risk. And then it's just a schedule of the good housekeeping program. So what we mentioned before, which is the inspection and maintenance of the sweeping catch basin cleaning, and then any non-stormwater discharge evaluation or evaluating for non-stormwater discharges, and then identifying and eliminating any unauthorized discharges such as illicit connections of sanitary waste or processed water that goes to the stormwater system, and then just documenting any allowable non-stormwater sources and BMPs. So this can be something like just like lawn watering runoff or air conditioning condensation. Just mention that into your plan. Next. So these next few slides are the exact same that we just went over before for the 1 to 7. The only difference now is for the larger properties that are 7+ acres, they have to adjust these into their SWIP, but it's going to be the same exact requirements that we went through before. So I'm going to go over them very quickly, but the first one's going to be minimizing pollutant exposure. Next is the good housekeeping program, so inspection and maintenance for catch basins and sweeping. Next, still in the inspection maintenance, just any other possible elements that might be on your site that needs to be inspected and maintained need to be included in the SWIM. And then we have minimizing impacts from major storm events, spill prevention, control, response plans, and the implementation of erosion and sediment control practices. All right, now we're moving on to the stormwater control plan. So what is a stormwater control plan? So a stormwater control plan explains how a property will meet its phosphorus pollutant load reduction target using approved structural and non-structural control measures, and is subject to DEM review and approval. So for this one, so the stormwater control measure planning, so the SCP needs to show how the site is going to achieve the long-term site-specific pollutant load reduction based on the receiving water. So if your site is discharging into the Mashapaug pond, it's going to be a 65% reduction of your long-term site-specific phosphorus load. And then if it goes into spectacle or tongue pond, it's going to be 68%. So we have a example here. It's the same example that's also in our permit. So the SCP implementation for the first term is only 30%. So we're going to start with the site's phosphorus load. So this is an example. So say your site is has 12.67 pounds per year of phosphorus, and it goes into spectacle pond. So your long-term site-specific reduction, okay, it's going to be 68% of that load of your site. So here we're going to take 12.67, multiply that by 60%, and then you get 8.62 pounds per year. So that's going to be the long-term reduction for your site. So the 8.62 pounds per year. And then in the first permit term, we're only asking for 30% of that to be met. So it's only going to become 2.59 pounds per year. Next slide. All right, so some requirements that are needed to be in this plan. You're going to need a site map and plan. So this kind of shows the sub-drainage areas and outfalls, flow paths, storm drain networks, any receiving wires, any existing structural SEMs that are going to be on your site. Sort of what I mentioned before, the site-specific pollutant load reduction calculation. So you're going to have to go, or site owners are going to have to calculate your site's existing, or calculate the phosphorus load from the site using existing impervious and pervious cover. And then after that, it's just applying either the 65 or 68% reduction based on which receiving water you go into. From there, just inventory and counting of SCMs and treatment credits. So it's including any existing and proposed SCMs that you're gonna put on your site, and then showing the amount of phosphorus reduction credit that's gonna be provided by each control. To do this, you have to use the approved crediting methodology in Appendix D, and you can use EPA's BMP accounting and tracking tool, which is the BAP. Also in your plan, you have to include any non-structural control measures. So this could be anything like sweeping, catch basin cleaning, that really reduces the phosphorus on your site. And then lastly, we have the inspection and maintenance plan that needs to be included. So SEMs, they need to be inspected and maintained properly to make sure that they function. And then in order to get credit for the phosphorus deduction, they need to be properly maintained and then need to be documented as well. The next slide that we're going to go over, it's going to be stormwater control measure accrediting. So these are just a few examples of structural and non-structural that can be used. So first we have structural controls. This can be anything like an infiltration trench, any rain gardens, bioretention areas, bioswales. Those are some structural controls. And for non-structural, we have anything like enhanced sweeping program, catch basin cleaning, and enhanced organic waste and leaf litter collection program. So these, for the non-structural controls, we already asked that you guys are sweeping and cleaning the catch basins, but in order to get credit for that, you guys have to follow the Appendix D criteria to make sure that you guys meet those requirements before you guys actually get those credits. All right, next slide. So this is the same exact site that we looked up before in the other examples, okay? But this one is having the actual um, site being updated with the needed control measures to meet the permit requirements. So first, we're going to be looking at on the left-hand side, okay, towards the bottom left, you kind of see that there's two infiltration basins that were installed. Those are used to treat any runoff from the parking lot. This is a great option for sites that allow for infiltration to the ground. That might not be the case for everyone where you can infiltrate to the ground, but there's other options, such as the one on the top right. The top right is just another type of SEM. This is I think a gravel wetland. This also can treat runoff, and it takes advantages of microbial processes to remove pollutants via filtration and plant uptake. Moving along, we can kind of go on the right side towards the middle. This is them just removing any unused parking spaces that might not have been used. So they're taking out the impervious cover that's closest to the water body that's on the right side of the site. So this kind of just adds increases the buffer zone between the parking lot and then the water body. And now kind of take a look towards the middle of the site where the parking lot is. Kind of see there where they removed some of the space and installed some swales there just to treat some more runoff before it eventually goes into a bioretention area. And then as you can see on the whole site as a whole, they did remove some pavement, but they didn't remove all of it. We're not asking permittees or any property owners to, rip up all your parking lot area that you might need. But as you can see, they only removed the unnecessary parts, and the site is still functioning without having to rip up all the previous cover. Next slide. We're going to be going over some key dates for the 7+ acres of impervious cover. This is a little different from the 1 to 7 acres. Okay, the timeline or all the elements are pretty similar, but the timeline is a little different. So just pay attention to that. So for April 1st, 2027, that's going to be when the NOI is going to be due along with the SWIMP, and the application fee is also due during that time, and that's going to be a $400 fee. And then also in that same month, so April 2027, we're going to begin sweeping and catch basin cleaning and infrastructure maintenance, and that's to be done yearly. After that, we have November 15th to December 15th, 2027. Same thing, just performing sweeping, catch basin cleaning, and any infrastructure maintenance. That's to be done yearly after that. Next, we go into February 15th, 2028. That's going to be when the annual report is going to be due for the 2027 calendar year. It's going to be due yearly after that. And then during the same time, the stormwater control plan is going to also be due along with the annual report. And then in July July 15th, 2028. It's going to be the $100 annual fee that's going to be due. And that's going to be due yearly after that. And at the very end, okay, so March 31st, 2031, this is when the 30% implementation of the SCP should be implemented already for the first permit term. And that'll be it for me. And then I'm gonna pass it off to Jen. She's gonna be going over the NOI or any permit authorization.
Thanks, Leon. And now that you've had a chance to learn more about what the permit requirements are and some important deadlines, like Leon said, I'm going to go through the application and authorization process. So the first thing you want to do is go to our website and download the Notice of Intent form. That's the application form. Fill that out, sign it, and you can submit it to DEM either by hard copy or scan it and send it as a PDF electronically via email to the email address that's on this slide. Make sure that the person who is signing the Notice of Intent is authorized to do so in accordance with the permit. Once we receive it, we will do a review and ensure that the application is complete and compliant. If you are a property that has 7 or more acres of impervious cover, we also need the application fee, and we can't review it until we receive that fee. So just be aware of that. And also make sure that you're submitting your stormwater management plan with the NOI for the 7+ acre impervious cover properties. If we find any deficiencies, we will notify the property owner and notify them what's deficient and what corrections need to be made to either the NOI or the stormwater management plan. During this time, you are not authorized to discharge. Authorization will be granted once deficiencies are corrected. Once we determine that your application is complete and compliant, we will issue an authorization letter. That letter is your authorization to discharge, and it should be kept with a copy of the permit in the property owner's records. Yeah, okay, so now I'm going to go through the Notice of Intent. Next slide, please. So as Brian mentioned before, this is, we're asking for the property owner legal name because the property owner is the person who is responsible for complying with this permit. So we're looking for the legal name, the address. You can identify a contact person for us to contact should we have any questions about the permit. And right in the middle there, we're also asking for the North American Industrial Classification Code, or the NAICS code, and the Standard Industrial Classification Code, or the SIC code, for the property owner. These are 2 data elements that we're required to obtain by EPA. So there is a link here on this slide where you can search for what your NAICS code is. If you are an entity that's a corporation, you might also already be filed with the Rhode Island Secretary of State's corporate database, in which case you would have already identified a NAICS code for your entity. And again, we're asking for the property owner's economic activity here, not a tenant or a business that might be operating on the property, but we're asking for the property owner. So for an example, if a site is owned by a real estate company, but they're leasing the space to like a pharmacy or a car dealership, we're looking for the NAICS code and the SIC code for the real estate company, not the other two, not whoever is using the property. So if you know either the NAICS code or the SIC code, there's also a link here on this site, on this slide, where you can get a crosswalk number for either or. So the Notice of Intent asks for both codes. Next slide, please. Now we're asking for the actual property, the street address of the property, city, and the state. We're also asking for the plat and lot numbers of the parcels that are associated with permit coverage. Some of you may know that we are also taking into account if there are multiple parcels that are contiguous, owned by the same entity. We've sort of lumped them together to figure out, the total amount of area and the total amount of impervious cover. So if you have multiple parcels, please list all of the plat and lot numbers here on the site, on the NOI. We're also asking for the latitude and longitude of the approximate center of your property. There are instructions, there are NOI instructions and some instructions on how to do that. We're asking for the total area of the property and the total impervious cover of the property in acres. We've already sort of determined that based on the tax assessor's records. So that information is available to you on our website, either in attachment 1 of the regulatory fact sheet or from the interactive map that's also on our website. So if you need that information, it should be fairly easy to get. There's also just a reminder here for those that are 7 or more acres of impervious cover, those properties, to attach the stormwater management plan. The next section is the facility type of ownership. This is another data element that we are required to ask for from EPA. We're just asking you to select one that best represents the type of ownership. So again, like, is it privately owned? Is it a state-owned facility, city-owned, whatever? Just choose one that best represents the ownership type. The next section, we're asking for how the property is being used. So again, like if it's a pharmacy, you want to tell us that it's a pharmacy and what the name of that business is, especially if it's different from the property owner. That's just to give us an idea of what's happening at the property. The next section asks for any permit ID numbers for any associated permits that you might have from RIPDs or the Clean Water Act. For example, if you have a construction general permit for your property, or remediation general permit, or down the line, a previous Mashapaug general permit. That's what this section is asking for. So we're looking for the actual permit ID number, which should be unique to your site. Next, we're asking for the number of outfalls. So an outfall or a discharge point for the purpose of this permit is defined as the location where stormwater is collected and concentrated and flows or discharges from your property to a receiving water body, either directly or maybe through a municipal separate storm sewer system, or what we call an MS4. So we're just asking for the number of outfalls you have. You want to go out to your site when it rains and figure out where the water is flowing and how it discharges from your property. We also are looking for the number of catch basins on your property, if there are any. And then finally, if you have any existing stormwater control measures that are either installed or are being implemented already at your site. So maybe you already have a rain garden or an infiltration basin or something like that, or maybe you're already doing monthly sweeping, which is more frequently than the permit is requiring right now. So we just want to know about that in this section. Next slide, please. So now we're looking a little bit more specifically in each discharge location. So if you have multiple places where water is leaving your site, you would have multiple outfalls that you want to identify and give a unique 3-digit name to. It could just be something as simple as 001, 002. For each outfall, we're looking for the outfall location description. That could be something like, east of the building or south of the parking lot or something like that. Something to make it clear which outfall you're talking about. Again, we want the latitude and longitude of the outfall itself, and whether or not your stormwater is discharging to an MS4. So in this area, we have Cranston, Providence, and DOT are regulated MS4s or have regulated MS4s. You might have a catch basin on your property that is piped to the municipal collection system. So we would want to know, which MS4 that is. Is it one of those cities or DOT or some other entity? And then we would want to find out what the ultimate receiving water body is for the discharges coming off of your property, whether it's directly into one of these 3 water bodies, Tongue Pond, Spectacle Pond, or Mashapaug Pond, or perhaps it's going through an MS4 in that case, if it's going through an MS4, you might need to contact that MS4 to find out where that particular collection system ends up. And if you have, sorry, so on the left-hand side of the slide, there are the current contact people for Cranston, Providence, and DOT. In the NOI instructions, there's also a link to a web page that we maintain on our website for all the stormwater coordinators in the state. And that's there. I've provided that so that in case these three contacts are no longer current in the future, that list gets updated annually. So you should be able to get the most current contact person. If you are discharging to an unnamed stream or wetland that is hydraulically connected to one of the water bodies, we're just asking you to select which one it eventually ends up in. Next slide, please. The last section of the NOI is the owner certification. So we're just asking for again, make sure that whoever is signing this form on behalf of the property owner is eligible to do so in accordance with the permit. And we're asking for their contact information just in case it's different than the contact person listed in section 1. I'm going to just take this time to encourage you all to apply early. You will most likely have questions. Please do not wait until the deadline. If there are any deficiencies, again, you won't be covered during a period of time when you're trying to, address the deficiencies. So the notice of intent form is currently on our website. You could apply as early as tomorrow or today even. So don't wait till the last minute because, we want to make sure you have time to ask questions and get answers before the due date. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to go through some of the annual report requirements. This is listed in the permit itself in section 6B. As Leanne mentioned before, there's an annual report that every permittee or every property owner is required to submit annually on February 15th. And the annual report should summarize the activities that have been, taken in the previous calendar year to comply with the permit. So making sure that there's documentation for your sweeping, your catch basin cleaning, and any kind of strategies that you're implementing to minimize exposure, any enhancements that you've made to your site to address major storm events or spill control, employee training, spill prevention, that kind of thing. And then also incidents of any non-compliance should be reported in the annual report. This list is not inclusive. You can look at the permit for more details of what should be in the annual report, but again, it should be summarized. So next slide, please. So these are some of the more specific things to the different tiers of property owners. For the 1 to 7 acre impervious cover properties, every year you'll be required to evaluate for a green infrastructure and impervious cover reduction. You want to describe and list any potential opportunities for pavement reduction, buffer enhancements, stormwater retrofits, and any capital projects that you've got planned, and then annually update that with potentially new opportunities or anything like that. So again, as Leanne mentioned, it's not required that you install stormwater controls, but you might get ahead of things and you might say, okay, we're going to, this other opportunity opened up and we would just want to know about that in the annual report. So just updating that annually with the annual report. For the 7+ acre impervious cover properties, we would be asking in the annual report for any updates to your stormwater management plan or stormwater control plan, including any maps showing new locations, locations of new SEMs that you might have installed to comply with the pollution reduction targets, your progress toward achieving your 30% pollution reduction target for the first permit term should also be in the annual report, as well as a summary of inspection and maintenance for any stormwater control measures that, any maintenance that was done during that reporting year. Appendix E of the permit has some inspection and maintenance requirements that you want to check out. Next slide, please. So this slide is just kind of covering some reporting and record keeping requirements, which are in Part 6 of the permit. Property owners must retain copies of all reports and certifications required by the permit and records of anything for a period of 5 years from the date of report or application. That includes sweeping and catch basin cleaning records, stormwater control measure, inspection and maintenance records, records of any spills or leaks that might have happened at your property, records of any improvements or enhancements, and of course a copy of the current stormwater management plan, stormwater control plan, and any inter reports. And then also, of course, the permit authorization letter and a copy of the permit itself should be kept with the property owner's records. Next slide, please. So what happens if you don't have a stormwater discharge, a point source stormwater discharge from your property? Well, that's possible. If you've taken a look at your site, you've gone out there in the rain and the water's not actually leaving your site, perhaps the topography is such that it kind of just collects and pools and doesn't actually go anywhere, or maybe it infiltrates. Or perhaps you have a way that water from your site goes to a combined sewer system, then you might be eligible for a no discharge certification exclusion. If that's the case, if you believe that is true for your property, you can, again, download the no discharge certification form from our website, fill it out, sign it, submit it, and make sure that whoever's signing it is authorized to do so. And what this does is it kind of verifies to everyone, to us, to you, that you are subject to the permit, but because you don't have a point source discharge to waters of the state, you qualify for an exclusion. Just real quick, in case you're not aware, a combined sewer system is a system where stormwater and sanitary sewage is combined, and so it goes to the water treatment plant and therefore doesn't discharge directly to one of the waters of the state. So therefore, if that is the case for your property, if you can document that your the runoff coming off your property actually doesn't go directly to waters of the state, but instead goes to a combined sewer system, again, the no discharge certification exclusion may apply to you. Next slide, please. So this is just, we kind of touched base on some of the graphics from this resource. It's the Property Owner Guide to Managing Stormwater. This is a good resource and a good tool for property owners to take a look at. There are lots of ideas on ways that you can reduce impervious cover, what kinds of stormwater treatment might be applicable to you. It can help you estimate costs, a bunch of other things. So we highly recommend that you take a look at this resource. There is a link to it on our website. And this was developed by VHB and the SNEP network. So thank you to those entities for doing that. In addition, on the next slide, there's additional resources that is available for stormwater professionals, but also for anyone. So there's the New England Stormwater Retrofit Manual. That's a great resource. There's the EPA's BMP accounting and tracking tool, which is the BAT. There's our DEM's Rhode Island Stormwater Design and Installation Standards Manual, and also the Rhode Island Low Impact Development Site Planning Design Guidance Manual. Sorry. So those, again, are resources that are available and linked to our website. There are links on our website to these documents. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to finish up by just giving another plug for our website. There's the link right there is dem.ri.gov/Mashapaug-stormwater. And if you have any questions, you can email us at the email address on the slide. Going to our website, as Brian mentioned before, there's a lot of information about the permit and about why we're issuing the permit. You can sign up for our email list, which we will use if there's any permit news or upcoming events, or if we post, a template like the annual report template, we might post that on our website and then send out an email blast. So we encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't already. You can also access all of the permit documents, the final permit, the appendices, the response to comments, the fact sheet, everything is there. You will also be able to get the forms. Like I said, the notice of intent form, the no discharge certification form, and the application fee form are already on the website. And any workshop and training materials will be posted. So last summer's informational workshop recording and slides are available now. And when we're done with our training today, we will be posting these slides and this recording on our website as well. So with that, I'm just going to take one more time to encourage you all to apply early. Don't wait till the last minute. Make sure you give yourself time to understand and ask us questions. We are here to answer them as best we can. But I just want to thank you for joining us today. That concludes the training. And we will now take your questions. So, Maya, would you please let us know if there have been any questions in the chat?
There hasn't been any questions that have come into the Q&A or the chat so far.
Okay.
Okay.
If anybody wants to ask a question verbally, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you. Okay. Annalise? Maya, are you able to unmute these folks?
Yeah, so I just allowed Annalise their microphone so they can unmute themselves now.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. Very comprehensive, very informative. I do have some follow-up questions regarding the presentation and then also some questions regarding the general permit language. Is that appropriate to ask during this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just start with some of my general permit questions and then I can go into my presentation questions. So the first one that I wanted to know was the general permit seem to have a lack of applicability for roof areas when it comes to non-structural stormwater control measures. In that section, it talks about non-structural stormwater control measures being applicable for pavement, sidewalk areas, exterior hardscape. So I wanted to understand if there will be any kind of non-structural measures applicable to roof areas, if that's been discussed in the past.
The methodology was developed by EPA Region 1. That methodology we adopted for this permit and doesn't have that that activity as something that's eligible for credits. With that being said, you could still reduce pollution from the rooftops if you wanted to sweep or clean the rooftops. That certainly is an option, but you wouldn't be eligible for SCM crediting for that activity.
Okay. And then for...
And if I don't answer your question completely, just let me know, or anyone who answers it, let us know if we need to go into more detail, but keep going, please.
Another section I saw in the general permit that didn't have language regarding its applicability was hydrodynamic separators or proprietary device use for structural stormwater control measure credit. And I know there are some regulation policies in Rhode Island that do allow for credit through the EPA program. So was that discussed at all regarding their applicability for credit as structural stormwater control measures?
Anything that is allowed or granted credit is in the permit in the appendix. And Leon, if you could just clarify which appendix the crediting is, if it's C or D, I can't recall.
I believe it's D.
Yeah, D. So D has what is approved for credit. Certainly, a hydrodynamic separator is a pretreatment device. You could utilize that as part of a overall design to remove pollutants and make the downstream treatment practice more effective. So just because it can't be used for crediting doesn't mean it shouldn't be used as part of the treatment train design.
Okay. And then I know it was talked about briefly in the presentation, retrofitting your existing site. And one of the items brought up when infiltration is not feasible due to existing site constraints, and the mention of gravel wet vegetated treatment systems was listed. Has there been concurrency review with the general permit for sites that have regulatory requirements such as LUPLs or ELURs related to them regarding requesting technical justifications for other applicable regulatory requirements on sites?
Well, the permit has a requirement that you can't infiltrate on a LUPL site, and it must comply with the stormwater manual. So, infiltration is not always going to be an option just straight into the ground. There may need to be an under drain that's collecting that stormwater after it goes through the treatment system, and then it can be discharged, but not necessarily into the underlying native soils. So the permit does require that levels be addressed appropriately.
Okay,
I'm not
so there might be applicability for line stormwater systems that are structural stormwater control measures to still receive credit, even if they do not have infiltration into the groundwater.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
wet vegetated treatment system or WIVET, that is a creditable practice, which is in Appendix D. That's just an example.
And
But a lot
then,
of the practices can be lined. You have to refer to the stormwater manual, but there are other practices that obviously can be lined so they don't infiltrate, but they do provide treatment.
I just wanted to make sure that the credit portion of applicability, based on Appendix D, still had that credit available. And then it was mentioned at the end of the presentation that there may be some template forms becoming available. Is there an anticipated timeline for some of those templates, if there will be some for the stormwater control plan or the stormwater management plans and the annual report? It seems like those three may have template forms coming out in the future.
Yeah, we definitely plan to develop an annual report template. We anticipate that we'll develop a stormwater management plan template. We've developed similar templates for other general permits. So we hope to get those two done. Stormwater control plan, we may develop a template or we may provide some example stormwater control plans from other projects that I've already submitted those similar plans. We'll have to consider how we can do that and if we can do that effectively, or if we can partner with someone to help us with that development of a template. So I would say the first two that I mentioned, we're definitely going to work on that over the next several months. Annual reports are not due until basically a year from now, roughly. And the stormwater management plan is also roughly a year away. So we hope to have those out and ready and available at least 6 months before people need to complete them. And that's, not a guarantee, but we will try to do that for sure. Just like we put together this training presentation well in advance of the application deadline. We've been working really hard to provide the resources that you need to comply. I didn't really say this before, but DEM cannot, clean up our environment, improve water quality alone, but we can help you to comply and provide you those resources. So we're definitely aware that you you may need those templates to help you comply, and we want to be able to fulfill that need. So thanks for your questions.
Thank you.
So I don't have an exact time frame, but we're hoping in the next 6 months we'll have it posted. And that's why Jennifer encouraged everyone to sign up for the email list. If we do develop templates or there's an upcoming deadline, we're going to send reminders via the email list. You know, your annual report is due in a month. That might be an email that we send. So there's a lot of great reasons to sign up for our email list. We're not going to send you a ridiculous amount of emails. We're going to send probably 5 emails a year, plus or minus. So if you're concerned about getting too many emails, we all get plenty of emails. We're not going to send too many emails, but we're going to send really key information to you. So please register for that email list if you haven't already.
Okay, the next person that has their hand raised is Dan, so I'm gonna give them the ability to unmute themselves now.
Yes, thank you. I'm actually all set. Annalise beat me to my question. I was just curious if there's going to be a standardized annual report form. You just answered that. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Dan.
Okay, and then we had some questions pop up in the Q&A. The first one being, will there be any reporting for this permit through the CDX portal, or will all reporting go through RIDEM by hard copy/email?
It's a great question. We do not have plans to have a net tool. We didn't have, well, EPA didn't have the resources to help us build a net tool for this permit, this general permit, like we have for our MSGP. There's a few other net tools in water that we use through CDX. But in the future, we hope EPA gets the resources to develop that tool for us and other states that might have a similar type of permit structure down the road. And we hope to convert to an electronic reporting tool so that it's easier for everyone. But unfortunately, yeah, this is going to be a manual paper process or by email. Great question.
Okay, the next question is, who is responsible for compliance at properties that are part of a commercial condominium with shared ownership?
That's a great question. I would think it would be all of the owners. I have to get back to you on exactly that answer. Maybe we can talk to our legal department and give us some guidance on who would be responsible. So if that person could email us that question, we can respond later. The email address is DEM, or Jen, can you please repeat the email address?
It's dem.ripdeesmashpog@dem.ri.gov.
Yeah, and our email address goes to each one of us. So it's not like it goes to a separate inbox that nobody checks. It just gets routed to our whole team. So if you email that email address, it goes to us directly, and we will get back to you on that. So thank you for your question. That was one that I could not answer.
All right, the next one is, there was a mention towards the beginning of the presentation about funding assistance for properties of 1 to 7 acres impervious surface. Are there any funding available, or is there any funding available for 7+ acres impervious surface?
Jen, do you want to take that one so people don't have to listen to me all day? If you can't answer it, I'll jump in.
Sorry.
I can take it. We were taking notes. All right, so the quick answer is the reason why Leon mentioned it for only the 1 to 7 acres of impervious cover properties is that generally grants are not available to folks that have to meet a permit requirement. So that's the reason for it. So if it's a voluntary action, there's more funding generally available. Now, with that said, there are loans that may be available through the SRF program, and we can look into that for the larger properties, but that would be a loan rather than a grant. And I'm not an expert on the loans, the SRF program and the grant process, but if someone had wanted to reach out to us directly by email and ask that question again, we could point you to the folks that could help with guiding you along the way. But generally, that's why Leon made the distinction between the small and large properties. If it's a permit requirement, a grant is usually not eligible, or the property's not eligible for a grant. It's mandatory. Does that satisfy your question, at least for now? And then you could always email us and we can get back to you. Maya, if you can see a response, or if you can just respond in the chat or respond out loud.
Yeah, we got a thumbs up.
Okay. Thank you.
The next question is, how will the off-site credit program be regulated? Who is the watershed management group who will lead regional management programs?
All right, so to answer that question, I mean, we have a provision in our permit. It's part VD11. It talks about credit for off-site stormwater treatment. It talks about regionalized stormwater management, permittee to permittee credit trading, or co-funding of projects. So those efforts and those coordinating, coordinating those projects will not be led by DEM. It'll have to be established by a group of properties or properties working together, just a few properties. So it will be a voluntary process that the properties will have to organize themselves around. And we didn't get into that in this presentation because it's a whole nother conversation, and it's not something that everybody will be interested in, but it is an option. And there are some examples. There is an example in Maine, the Long Creek watershed, where they established a regionalized stormwater management group or watershed group to address stormwater pollution.
All right, the next question is section VD8. Does this mean if you were doing a new project in the watershed, how will this be permitted through the RIPTES construction program?
Yeah, so if you're doing any new development or redevelopment, it would be permitted the same way it's permitted now. The only difference is when you put together your stormwater control plan, if it's applicable to your site, you're going to outline that proposed stormwater control measure in your stormwater control plan, and then you're going to report to us what the crediting you receive from that stormwater control measure once it's constructed. But all the permitting will go through the same mechanisms that you go through now through DEM. You're just going to report to my program through this permit the crediting that will apply, and update us on your stormwater control plan and stormwater management plan as applicable. Did that answer the question? Do we have any confirmation of that? Okay. Great question. Somebody read the permit.
The next question, can you elaborate on examples of what would qualify for a no discharge certificate?
Jen, you can take that one.
Yeah, so again, you want to make sure that you're evaluating your site for where stormwater discharges from your property. And if it doesn't discharge from your property, or like I said, if it goes to a municipal separate storm sewer system that is actually part of a combined sewer system, Again, you'd probably have to reach out to the MS4 or whoever the entity is that owns the collection system and figure out where it goes. If they can verify that it goes to a combined sewer system, then you could say, well, all of my stormwater discharge goes there, and therefore I don't have a discharge. If it's just, it's not going to a collection system, but it just doesn't leave the property, again, it probably have to be topography, or perhaps you already have an infiltration basin on your property and it all gets directed there and nothing ever like overflows anywhere. It'll infiltrates and doesn't leave your property. You can't, and you can verify that you don't have a discharge to waters of the state, then that's when a no discharge might apply. There is a section in the no discharge certification form that kind of asks you why you think, what the situation is, why you think that there is no discharge. So you would explain that on the form. Does that answer your question, or were you looking for something more? All right, it looks like that was Todd that asked that question. So I don't know, Todd, if you want to let us know if that answered it, or if you want to come on off mute, we can allow that.
Hi, yes, thank you. That was perfect. I appreciate that. And nice job on the presentation. I had one other question that I don't think I posted yet. And I know earlier, I think Annalise referenced it, but I was unclear on how an ELUR will integrate into this plan. Specifically in regards to, if we're going to do a capital improvement project, would we just reference this would be a violation of our ELUR and we reviewed it and we're going forward with our capital project? Would that be acceptable if it had to do with digging up impervious property?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be restrictions on every property. There's going to be feasibility issues. So what we want in the stormwater control plan is the opportunities that you can take advantage of. You may have areas of your site that just you really can't implement something in a certain area, or maybe you can make the case that the entire site, you can't add any stormwater control measures, but you have to make that case, tell us why you're restricted, and try to meet the goals to the extent that you can, and make the case why you can or cannot.
And obviously, if it was a no discharge site, then that would be moot at that point.
Yeah, a RIPD's permit is only needed if you're discharging pollutants from a point source to waters of the state. Okay, so that's why we gave people the option for the no discharge certification if they go to the combined sewer system, or if it's a very unique situation where the site just doesn't have a discharge. That's going to be rare during, all storm sizes. A day like today, it's raining very lightly. A lot of people won't have a discharge, but there'll be other days where there will be a discharge. So it has to be really, you have to be really confident that you're not going to have a discharge at any time.
Yeah. And as far as the site with, checking for leaking pars, checking, roof drains, if the existing tenant, has an EH&S policy where, unless you're trained, you can't enter the property, things like that, especially enter the building, get access to the roof. If they're, whatever operations they're doing are, not conducive for untrained people to come in and walk through the property or walk through the building to get to the roof. What do you recommend for the property owners to do for things like that?
It's a great question. I think you'll have to develop some agreements where that access can be allowed, or, there can be someone that can accompany the property owner or their representative to do those assessments. So there'll have to be obviously a communication and agreements to to get that work done. And obviously, you know, maybe a lease agreement is already in place and doesn't allow for that, but maybe it can be modified or
Yeah, I
changed
think,
over
yeah,
time.
the modification was interesting because we met with our tenant and immediately, this isn't a cost to us. This has nothing to do with us. And we don't account for it in the lease because it's legally, it's not in there. And none of this is in there for that. We never anticipated that any type of operational activities on the property would go to the landlord. We have most of those going to all of those going to the tenant as far as even permits for what they do on the property. It's all borne by the tenant. So this is a little bit of uncharted territory for the leases.
Right. No, it's a great point. I think you know, we talk about the adaptive management approach in our permit. You know, I think there's an adaptive management approach to working with the tenants too, maybe working
Yeah.
to improve that process over time. If there are some legal or, you know, some agreements that are in place that limit you initially, you can tell us why you're having those challenges. But I think in a lot of cases it can be just a simple matter of education and communication. I think that's the first step, and try to convey to them what the goal is. And I'm sure that their business, you know, would be better off if they were preventing pollution. And they're probably already trying to do a lot of the things that we are asking the property owners to make sure is being done. So I don't see how there couldn't be a solution that's found over
Okay.
time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. It's, you know, we can't anticipate every wrinkle that comes up, and we need the feedback. We didn't get that type of feedback earlier on in the process, but we appreciate it now. And we appreciate you bringing up the realities that you're facing.
All right, we had 2 more questions come in. If someone has a no discharge certificate under the MSGP, is that a no discharge certificate under this permit as well?
Okay, so we didn't talk about this, but I will go back to the second slide, and I apologize for the way I'm navigating, but so within the watershed, there are all the properties that are subject to the permit. And on this map, and the interactive map, you'll see there's 2 properties that are in green on this map that I'm showing you now. So those are actually, if you go to the interactive map, those are properties that have MSGP coverage or are required to get MSGP coverage. So they would be exempt from the permit per the Mashapaug general permit language. But if you have a no discharge certification, you're basically telling, for the MSGP, you're basically saying, I don't have a discharge, I don't need a RIPD's permit for the industrial stormwater permit. So if that's the case, you don't have MSGP coverage, then you are subject to the Mashapaug permit. However, if you can make the case that you have no discharge for MSGP, you can make the case for the Mashapaug permit too, and therefore you wouldn't be subject to our permit either. So either permit. So great question. They should translate the same. But I did want to point out that if a property does have an MSGP, they are discharging under the MSGP, which is our industrial stormwater permit, has a whole different set of requirements. They are not subject to the Mashapaug permit, but they are subject to the MSGP. So I'm kind of bringing up a separate point while I'm answering that question.
All right, the next question was how long will the application reviews how long will the application reviews take prior to RIDEM approval?
For the 1 to 7 acre properties, it'll be a very quick review. We can probably review one application in a day and issue the authorization that same day if everything is is filled out correctly, accurately, the Latin longs make sense, signatures are there. When it comes to the stormwater management plan, properties that have to submit a stormwater management plan, that's going to take us a little bit longer, probably, I would say 30 days. The stormwater control plans, those could be, take more time, but that's not going to really hold you back from getting permit coverage. So I hope that answers the question. I think, on the simple, just the NOI reviews will be very quick to turn that around or let you know that there's deficiency. We're developing in-house templates so we can process those applications quickly. With the stormwater management plans, they'll take a little bit more review time, but I would say 30 days we'll get back to you, whether it's deficient or you're authorized. And if I didn't answer your question, please let us know, or let us know if you're good. Great question. Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one last question. Will properties 1 to 7 acres of impervious surface ultimately be required to develop an SCP and meet 100% SSR? The guidance document on the website seems to indicate this will become a requirement in 15 to 25 years.
That is what we're projecting, but that is not required under this first permit term. When we reissue this permit in 5 years, we were going to go out to public notice with the next version of the permit. And what you see in the fact sheet and our response to comments is what sort of the trajectory that we're projecting. But property owners, the public will have a chance to weigh in on those decisions before we issue the next permit when we reissue this permit in 5 years. So it's not set in stone. It is what we are hoping to achieve in the long run, a continuation of this adaptive management approach, continuously improving the way stormwater is managed in the watershed so that we can get these receiving water bodies to where they need to be swimmable, drinkable, fishable, not drinkable necessarily, but that's sort of the high level goal. So yeah, it's not set in stone. It is where we hope to go, which is why we're encouraging the smaller sites to take advantage of grants, to take advantage of opportunities where they can before it's a requirement. But there's nothing establishing it as a requirement under this permit right now. And I hope that answered the question as best as I could.
Yeah, we got a thumbs up for that one. And I
Okay.
think that was all the questions that we had.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending. We really appreciate you being here and asking those great questions. I'm sure everybody that is listening to the questions got something out of that as well. And we hope that this presentation was informative. You can come back to it down the road. It'll be on the website. The slides will be there within a day or so. So if you forgot what we said, you can always view it again. And most importantly, sign up for our email list. And if you have questions, please reach out to us. We want to help you succeed, and we will get back to you within 1 business day. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.